Thank you. Folks, my next guest blows my mind. I don't know about yours, but it blows my mind, man. She is a dynamic woman. She is the CIMG Marketing Woman of the Year. Show some love. Among other things, she's also the CEO of Airtel, and since she became CEO, she has managed to have Airtel become the fastest growing telecom company in Ghana. Show some love. She has an electronics background, and she's a chartered engineer. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together. Show some love for Lucy Quist. There we go. All right. Lucy, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Oh, so good to have you here.
Very good to be here. I've been looking forward to meeting you.
I've been tracking you now for a year now. We'll take a commercial break, and when we come back, we'll get busy. Folks, we're going to pause for a commercial break, and when we come back, Lucy Quist is in the house. We'll be right back.
We're just getting started. The KSM Show will be right back.
Welcome one more time. So good to have you here.
Nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. You started off in automotive engineering. Yes. You were working with Ford?
Yes.
Wow.
I started out working at Ford Motor Company straight out of school, actually, even before university. I got my hands dirty, full-time work, making cars, quite literally. And then I always wanted to be an engineer. This had always been part of my plan. So while I was
from as early as how young?
Very young, probably about 5, 6. So it was pretty much the norm for me. My dad's an engineer. He allowed me to tinker with things. And he was very proud for me to tinker with things. So it seemed like a normal progression. Of course, I always tell people that you have those rebellious teenage years. And I went through that phase of, I won't be an engineer because you want me to be an engineer, so I won't be an engineer. But when I finally, hit that point of more maturity, I went back to really wanting to be an engineer. And I was very fortunate to already be working at Ford Motor Company at that point.
How did you get to Ford Motor Company?
Interesting story. So there I am, little tiny school leaver from Ghana, arrived in the UK, and my uncle who I was staying with was working at Ford, and he didn't really, I was looking for a job. I don't think he thought I would get the job because it was really the job of at the time, people who were grown people. I was a school-leaving teenager, but I applied and I did my interviews, and they were very impressed, and they gave me the job. And I have to tell you this because you get this. School leave, I arrived on the shop floor to start making cars, and someone said, "Whose baby is this? Who has allowed their baby to work?" But very quickly they kind of all took me under their wing and thought, we'll help you be successful, because compared to them, these were grown people who were doing this job to raise their families. So relatively, I did kind of come across as a baby, but they took me in, and my Ford career started in earnest at that point.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So from there?
So Ford, I spent quite a long time there. So I started as a school leaver. I worked there as while I was at university. So even while I was at university studying electrical and electronic engineering, I would go back every break to do an internship. I actually took a whole year out of my university study, so I added an extra year to my degree just to spend that year training as going through all the internships, so that by the time I graduated, I was a proper practical engineer. And I'm very fortunate to have had the opportunity. And then I carried on. After my degree, I worked in design engineering. I worked in pricing and costing. I worked in project management. I had the opportunity to go and work in Portugal. And it's one of those stories that I like to tell of real, you have to be determined. You have to go for what you want. So I go to my boss and I say to him that, people get this, get sent to Portugal to do some work, get some experience. I want to go to Portugal. And he was one of these really kind of cerebral people who don't like being surprised. So he looks at me and he says, "Well, I don't think so." I said, "You think about it." So then I carry on off, and time passes, and a few days and weeks here and there. And then he calls me back to his office and he goes, "You can go." I thought, yes. So I packed my bags, and I had been to Portugal a few times. to work with, we had Ford had a company there a few times, but I didn't really know the place. I love adventure. So I arrive at the airport, pick up this rental car, and let's drive off and find this apartment I'm supposed to live in, you know, just like this. And I go off and live this life in Portugal. And I was supposed to be in Portugal for 6 months, but I had this wonderful, wonderful boss, Manuel, and when 6 months came, he goes, "Why don't you stay a little bit longer?" So we had 3 months. He goes, "Oh, stay a little bit longer." We had 3 months. And you know, 6 months quickly became 14 months. At which point,
so you said 14 months?
Yes, and I did learn Portuguese as well. At which point I said, you know, I do have to go back and carry on from where I left off because I need to make some more progress here. But it was a wonderful time in Portugal. I spent 10 years at Ford Motor Company.
Wow. Wow.
Really got into how cars are made, process, structure. You succeed by having a repeatable process that you can fine-tune and make better over time. You know, if there's anything I learned from Ford, it is the fact that, you know, you can keep growing success and you can get better and better at it, but you have to learn to be consistent about what you do.
I see. So what specifically, were you in design? Or
yes, I did design engineering, I did project management, I did manufacturing, you know, running the manufacturing lines. I did a bit of supply chain because when you're in manufacturing, you have to manage the extension into ensuring delivery. And I think the most exciting thing that happened for me was when we used to make parts only for Ford. So when a whole car is being made, it's broken up into divisions. So you have the engine team, and you have the audio team, and you have the glass team, and they're all different functions, and everybody makes these things, designs them, and somehow it all has to come together and make one car. And you have all these suppliers in between that you have to work with. And what was really exciting is that towards the end of my time at Ford, they kind of spun out our division, which was called the Automotive Components Division. They spun it out to become this unit that could now supply parts to other car manufacturers. So I went from making parts, particularly audio parts for the Ford branded cars, to getting the opportunity to make parts for Fiat, for Jaguar, Land Rover, and so on. So you get to see this whole evolution of industry. I really call that time my formation. You know, as a professional, I think if you can get a solid grounding in some place that really teaches you how large organizations work, you go in first and feel like a drop in the ocean and get lost. And then you find your feet as you continue to paddle along, and then you figure it all out. So, yeah, some of the best years of my career were at Ford Motor Company.
Wow, give it up, man, give it up, give it up. And so, with that background, you know, electronics and electrical, and, mechanical, and then you find your way in telecom, and what was the transition like?
So, and one secret to my what would eventually become a good telecoms career is that when I did electrical and electronic engineering, somehow in my final year, when you had to kind of specialize a little bit, I chose, at the time it was called communication. It wasn't even called telecoms, it was called communications. And when you do this, you have to learn things like my project was on microwave transmission. So I actually built this whole microwave transmission set, and I was doing transmission of television signals. And trust me, it's not as easy as it looks. I mean, we switch on the telly and it comes on. But transmitting a TV signal, the complexity in it is that you have to make the transmission of sound and images synchronized. And it's not easy because sound and image, you have different wavelengths, different properties. So to get them both to land at the other place at the same time, for you and I to enjoy the view, and I'm sure the viewers are enjoying the view now, it's not as easy as it seems. I had done a bit of communication, and when you do communication, you also do things like, wide area networks, local area networks, a bit of microprocessor stuff. So what I didn't realize that it was building a foundation for telecoms, because I didn't know it was going to happen. But after I'd spent a number of years at Ford, what struck me was that we, the engineers, had to do all the clever design stuff, but we had an insufficient degree of information when it came to the customer interaction. Right? So I wasn't doing sales and marketing, I was doing design. So it means the sales and marketing people go and find out what customers want, and come and tell us
Come
what
tell you,
customers
okay.
want. Now, our interpretation of what customers want, because we're engineers, is about designing the best possible widget that you can ever imagine. Customers want an experience. They don't just want the best ever. The best, you know, and when we talk about the best, we're talking about it from the point of view of the physics of how it works, the light intensity. And sometimes, you know, your perfect light intensity is not what the customer really wants. So I decided I needed to learn those things. How do I get to know how to do marketing and sales? How do I get to understand the strategy behind what we are doing? And so I decided to get a master's, an MBA to be very specific, so that I could bridge that gap between being this, you know, technically inclined person to somebody who understands the commercial aspects of the business. Because ultimately a business has to make money. Because I've always had the ambition to run companies, run businesses. And I was constantly hungry. Honestly, I don't think you'd have enjoyed being my boss, because this is this young woman who, you know, every few months she comes and says, what's my next job? What's my next job? We need to move on. We need to make some progress. I went and did this MBA, life-changing year. Wow. I did my MBA in France. And I met some absolutely amazing people, professors. Some of the people I met were from all over the world. I'm still in touch with many of them. And honestly, that year changed my life. It changed my life because I came out of my MBA with a new lens. And I do wear glasses sometimes, so the analogy works very well for me. I suddenly saw the world very differently. I thought I was going in to learn mainly sales, marketing, commercial functions. I came out so much more aware and conscious of the geopolitics of the world, you know, how things really work across the world, how different regions are positioned, the way they're positioned. And it got me actually thinking a lot more about, you know, back home, Ghana, Africa, what we need to do differently. Because you sit in this class and you're discussing a subject like, you know, international political analysis. And I was very fortunate. My lecturers were very kind of, I think they thought I was ambitious. So they sometimes were very pointed at me. And you're having a debate, and it's very obvious that as a continent, we have sat out many of the conversations. So I saw the world differently. I finished my MBA and I got a job in investment banking. I spent about 1.5 years there. We were doing a lot around, you know, operations, mergers and acquisitions. It was fun, but you know, I needed more than that. So the way I actually came finally into telecommunications, I would say was really fate. You know, I could give you the whole intellectual, and I did this and this happened, but it was really fate. It was one of those things where my children were really young at the time, and when I go into work, I give it my all. So my husband says to me, you know, the kids are really due a trip to Ghana. They haven't been to Ghana this year. You need to take them. And he says, I know you. Once you get on a new project, they're not going anywhere. So I pack off my bags and I bring these children over to Ghana on holiday. And by then I'd started kind of trying to feel my way. In fact, beyond feeling my way, I had tried for at least 2 years to find a job anywhere in Africa. I'm like, if I can't get Ghana, you take me anywhere, I'll go. It's not as easy as it looks, but I kept trying. So I come to Ghana, I come on this break with my children, and I went to meet a friend of mine. She worked in HR, and I said, you know, you're in HR, you're an HR director. I'm just sharing with you what I'm feeling. I want to come into Ghana. I want to work in technology. I don't know where to start. I don't know where to go. But you just give me some advice. And as fate would have it, so I'd come to Ghana in May of 2008, May 2008. And within that time, the company, who's now one of my competitors that my friend was working with, in fact, she was a sister of a friend, said, oh, you know what? She calls me back and she says, you know, we just recruited this guy from France and he stood us up. And after talking to you, I think you're the best person to do that. I'm like, are you kidding me? And she says, absolutely. And I tell these stories because it's good for people to see what goes on. Also, so she calls me back and she says, you know what, the guy stood us up. I think you have a shot. Come back for an interview. And I kind of froze on the phone because I had no interview clothes. You can't go for an interview and not look the part, look like you're on holiday in some kind of holiday gear. So I kid you not, At that time, Accra Mall was kind of new. I packed myself off to Accra Mall. I must find a dress for an interview. And, you know, Ghana is such a wonderful place because I find this dress, it's ill-fitting, and they say, oh, no problem. Here's the number of a seamstress, just take it to her and she'll adjust it for you and you'll be fine. So I find this dress rather expensive, but I was desperate. But I thought, if you're going to go for the interview, you might as well go for the interview. So while I'm busy finding the dress, my husband's sitting in the UK. He's like, don't worry, I'll clean up your CV for you. Take them your CV. So this holiday has now turned into a job search. He cleans up the CV.
Wow.
By the evening, I have a CV as well ready. Let's do this. Then I get there and they're like, oh no, but first you need to do some tests. I mean, I know she said you can do this, but you need to prove to us that you have something up there. So I do all these tests, these various standardized tests. I thought I'd finished school. And oh, you did great. Your scores on the test were good. Let's do some interviews. So I went from being on holiday, being approached of a possible opportunity, interviewing for a job in Ghana, and then being told by the time I finished interviewing for the job in Ghana, oh, no, we think we'll give you a job that spans across Africa in the space of a few days. Wow. And I kid you not, I was here in May 2008, holiday turned interview. By July, 22nd of July, I had started work.
Wow. 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 That's amazing.
Telecoms. That's
really?
how I came into, honestly. It sounds surreal, but that's exactly what happened. Really, that quickly. So I end up coming into telecoms. You really want to get into a great space in Ghana, in Africa. I end up with this Africa job. I don't know that much about telecoms. What do I do? So I decided that, you know what, I'm going to learn everything I can possibly learn. Yes, forget that I did a degree and we did some. This is the real deal. This is now business. This is not what you saw in a book. And I remember so well the first 6 months. I panicked every day. I thought to myself, no, someone's going to show up one day and say, how did they give you this big job? No, you need to go home now. And I was literally every day going, you've got to prove what you're doing here. And it was that kind of panic mode. I used to get to work at 7. I was like, I can't drop you off at school. I'm going to work. 7 o'clock, I was at my desk. The earliest I'd leave was 7 p.m. I wanted to know everything. I didn't care who you were, what level you were. If you were working in a function that I felt I had to learn, I would come and sit with you. So tell me how this sales thing works. And then they'll draw it out and okay, thank you very much. And I would go everywhere. I'd follow people to go and visit customers. I would join projects that had nothing to do with me, but I'd say, project team, I need to join you. And I'd sit on the project team. And of course, because my job was across Africa, it meant that I was going to different countries as well, Francophone, Anglophone. And everywhere I went, I really took the time to try and understand telecoms in the context of their market. And it varies from market to market, because I think sometimes people don't appreciate that we all have a phone, but our need for the phone varies. And how the service is delivered to us is very much dictated by our market conditions. So let me give you an example. You know, in Ghana, we think of credit being sold under a parasol, right? There's one African country where parasols are not actually allowed. So you have to adjust your business model in Rwanda so that you're selling in a fixed structure. However, I go to Chad, and some of the people who sell credit are riding on camelback, right? Because we don't always think of the context, but people need to get around on their camels, and people need to be able to sell credit. So you put yourself on your camel with your credit, and you carry on. And you have
to sell from the camelback?
Yeah, they have little pop-up foldable chairs, and you sit on your camel with your foldable chair. And when you arrive in this neighborhood where you think people are about to buy credit, you hop off your thing, you set up your little chair, you do your sale, you get back on your camel, you keep moving. So context varies, and I think that I was very fortunate that I could see and learn in different markets, not just the Ghanaian market, and be able to compare how execution of a strategy varies from market to market. So I honestly, telecoms is so exciting.
Put your hands together, man. We're going to go for a commercial break. When we come back, we'll still keep busy.